Hi, my name's Dr. Dave Hone. I'm a paleontologist at Queen Mary University of London, and I'm here today talking about Fodonyx. So Fodonyx is a rhynchosaur. If you don't know rhynchosaurs, they're a really quite cool group of reptiles called archosauromorphs. So that is, they belong to a group that's just outside the archosaurs, which is a really major group of derived reptiles, which includes the crocodilians, the pterosaurs and the dinosaurs, and therefore also the birds. So the rhynchosaurs sit just outside that. They have a pretty wide distribution. We find lots of them in North and South America and in Africa and other places like this. And they're mostly medium-sized to quite large reptiles, so a metre, maybe a metre and a half long, kind of quite stocky, quite stumpy. So they do have this semi-sprawling gait, so they kind of walk somewhere between lizards and crocodiles in terms of their gait, and these really famous triangular head with these unique kind of tusks formed of part of the bones of the jaw at the front of the face. So rhynchosaurs are really quite unusual, and I think many people are actually familiar with them, even though they're quite common in the Triassic and were an important part of many ecosystems. They were herbivores with these strong tusks shearing and grinding, biting we think tough plants, and then grinding them up with very thick teeth in the jaws and these very, very strong muscles that would have attached onto these kind of triangular heads. Fodonyx has a special place for me. It was the first animal that I ever worked on, the first species that I named when I was still a PhD student back at the University of Bristol, and Fodonyx was found on the south coast of England. In fact, rhynchosaurs are quite common in the UK, and it was described based on a skull, which was actually later assigned to a new species, so that went to a new genus, in fact, called Bentonyx, named after Mike Benton, my PhD supervisor, who's done an enormous amount of work on rhynchosaurs, has been very important in their research. But the main specimen of Fodonyx, which still retains that name, was a fairly complete postcranial skeleton. So we had a lot of dorsal vertebrae, a lot of ribs, part of the tail, and in particular one really nice hind limb in 3D. It's one of the best limbs that's ever been found for any rhynchosaur. And so this formed a chapter of my PhD thesis. So it's something that I wrote up, and so something that I've always kept an eye on the rhynchosaurs. And I think they're really underrepresented in the kind of paleontological world. So researchers know about them, but in terms of artwork and renditions of them, I don't think I've ever seen a single 3D model or toy or anything like that that's ever been made. Art-wise, Gabriel Agurto and Bob Nichols I know have illustrated them a couple of times, but other than that, not many people have even drawn them. And yet, they're really quite distinctive looking, they're really quite interesting, they've had quite a lot of study. As I say, they've been quite important components of ecosystems around the Triassic. So it's a shame that they don't get as much love. So the reconstructions that have been done here, I'd love to say I was an advisor on them, but basically they got sent to me and I looked at them and went, these are absolutely fantastic. I think they're really nice representations of these animals. Sadly, we don't have any skin for them that I'm aware of. But being archosauromorphs, they're going to have some kind of scales and some kind of reptilian scaly skin that's probably quite close to that we see in crocodilians and early dinosaurs. I think this is probably quite an accurate representation. The tusks are really nicely illustrated. You can really see the square skull. And in the burrow that's been done here, that's a little bit of speculation is probably quite a strong word. There's a general idea that rhynchosaurs were quite good at digging. And so indeed Fodonyx means basically digging claw, because they have these really quite large thin claws, particularly on the back legs, and it's long been suggested that they're digging quite well with them, probably scratching around in the soil, getting out things like roots and tubers, hence those really shearing beaks or tusks at the front of the skull, being able to bite into that kind of stuff. But also if you look at, animals like rabbits and the way they burrow, similar really big strong teeth at the front, very good at gnawing through roots or through tough bits of soil, and then they scratch and fling that soil out with their legs. So we don't know directly of any rhynchosaur burrows. We've never found a rhynchosaur in a burrow to my knowledge, but they are animals that have been suggested to be quite good at digging, and I don't think it's unreasonable that they could have dug some kind of simple tunnel system like the one that's been modelled here. And so I think that is quite a good example of the sorts of behaviours we might expect for them. So it's perfectly reasonable, even if we currently don't have direct evidence for that. So yeah, Fodonyx from the south coast of England, from the earliest part of the Middle Jurassic, named in 2008 by me and my then PhD supervisor Mike Benton. It's a really nice example of a rhynchosaur. There are more complete skeletons out there, but it's certainly one of the better ones that has been found in the UK, and it's just genuinely fantastic to see a nice representation of this group, because I really think they deserve more attention, and this is a beautiful rendition of that animal. So I hope people like it, and I hope this little video explains a little bit more about it and perhaps why you should like rhynchosaurs too. Thanks very much for listening.